All right, Coach Tygard, head football coach at Cleveland High School. Coach, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I was the idiot when I first asked you on like last year. I was like, Cleveland, Ohio? That's awesome. I was, wait a minute, there's a Cleveland, Tennessee. You idiot.
Yeah, we get that a lot. When we just got back from the Memphis 7-on-7 tournament, everybody thought we were from Ohio. So we're used to it by now.
I was like, this was a while back, and I remember seeing it, and I'm like, oh, this coach got it at Cleveland, Ohio. And then, then when I actually looked at it, I was like, wait a minute, that's Cleveland, Tennessee.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. I learned something.
Yeah, so we're about 20 minutes outside Chattanooga. So a lot of people know where Chattanooga is.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a dumb Central Illinois boy. So when you talk about geographics, it's not my thing. Not my thing. Well, Coach, thanks for being here. Your defense coordinator's been on here a couple times. He's an awesome guy. So that's how I kind of knew to follow you. He's a great guy. And you've had quite the coaching journey. So let's talk about your coaching journey. Lots of stops, lots of people you worked for. And stuff like that. I'll sit back and let you tell it. But how do we end
that one could take a while if you do the whole thing. So I've been at 9 schools, since starting in college. So my first job was I was a student assistant at the University of Tennessee for Coach Fulmer. Did that for 3 years volunteering, and then I was one of the first analysts at Tennessee for the following 3 years. I did that for Lane Kiffin, and then a couple more years with Derek Dooley. So there's 6-7 years right there that I got started of crazy stories and 3 head coaches and all kinds of drama and issues and weirdness. So there's a lot of those fun stories to talk about from those years. And then other than that, I bounced around some small colleges. I was at the Cumberlands in Williamsburg, Kentucky, a little NAIA school. Did a couple years out in Joplin, Missouri at Missouri Southern. And then I've been a defense coordinator in high school at Notre Dame in Chattanooga. I've been an offensive coordinator in Brentwood, Tennessee, at Ravenwood, in Madison Academy in Huntsville, and then been a head coach. This is now my 3rd stop between North Jackson and Alabama. Blackman High School in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, outside Nashville, and then now went to Cleveland. Been there for about a year and a couple months.
Yeah, that's quite the journey, especially the time at Tennessee when all that stuff was going down. Like, how did that? Don't tell me anything you don't got to tell me, but that had to be a wild time.
Well, a lot of it, I think it's past the. It's been so long now that a lot of the stories have been out there or have already been told, but. I was fortunate to get in the door because I didn't play college football. I didn't, I was a high school player on a really good program in Nashville. But that was about it. I was just a student at UT. And my first coaching job actually I was the head coach of a 7th grade team there locally in Knoxville because I missed football and kind of missed the team aspect. And I really enjoyed it. So I went to school to go into commercial real estate or sales or something like that. But loved coaching that little middle school team so much that I decided I want to do this for a career. I want to be a high school coach, college coach. I read Charlie Weiss's book. I remember probably my freshman year of college, sophomore year of college, and talked about how he didn't play and all this. Looked up Mike Leach and Paul Johnson, all these guys that didn't play college football. So that was kind of the idea. I had class with Jonathan Crompton, who was the quarterback at the time, and a couple guys that were players, Jock McClendon and some other Tennessee players. And I was asking them like, hey, I'm interested in coaching. Where do I go to get a job? They said, you need to go talk to this guy. His name's Scott Altizer. He's in the football building. So I tracked him down, found Scott. I asked him for a job. He told me to go away. So he immediately said no. And I said, I'm not taking that. So I told him, like, I'll do anything. I'll clean toilets, whatever you need. I love the Vols. I want to be a part of the program. Told me no. So I ended up asking him once a week, every week for 3 months until I got a job. And that finally he said, fine, you can be my assistant. Sit right there. I sat there for an entire day, nothing to do. Came back the next day. He didn't need an assistant. Like, I came back the next day, and one of the GAs came running in all stressed out because at the time, John Chavis was the defensive coordinator, and there was a lot of work to do for the GAs. It's not as much now with Pro Football Focus, PFF, and all this stuff they have now. But back then, Coach Chavis made everyone pad plays like Bill Belichick. You literally had to watch the film, pad the play on a notepad, and then type that into the Exos computer. And so, all the GAs are struggling and they've got so much work to do. And Scott Altizer said, hey, here's Chandler, take him back there, teach him what to do. And for the first year, that's all I did was sit back there and pad plays and draw. No one even knew who I was. By year 2, I'm going down to the defensive staff room to deliver whatever. And then I become the guy that's going to take the cars to get car washes, to pick up Klondike bars on Tuesdays, Gus's Good Times Deli cheeseburgers on Wednesdays. I went and got all that stuff year 2. Year 3, I start getting on the field and traveling, helping running scout teams. But I mean, it was so hardcore back then for GAs. Coach Chavis would make the GAs do up downs at practice if scout team was not run correctly.
Oh God.
I was just a student, so it wasn't me, but I'm watching my buddies like literally doing up downs in front of the entire team. I mean, it was just a different world back then. And then I fully, was groomed to be the next GA under Coach Fulmer, but he got fired. So Lane Kiffin comes in. He got rid of every single GA, full-time coach, literally every secretary, everyone in the building was gone. They weren't paying me, so I kept showing up. And Monty Kiffin, he hired his dad, Monty, who was coming from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the time. He didn't know how to turn his computer on. He didn't know how – he was bringing all of his Buccaneers playbooks on PowerPoint at the time. He didn't know how to get them uploaded to his computer. All he wanted was the logo to be changed from the Buccaneers to Tennessee. And I was the only one in the building that knew how to do it. That was still kind of hanging around. And so next thing you know, I'm, the first analyst hired, and Ed Orgeron comes on that staff. And, next thing you know, I'm helping doing all the playbooks, and we were transferring playbooks from PowerPoint to Visio. Is when Visio, I guess, first kind of became popular, for playbook software. Mm-hmm. And that was my first job. I mean, I did everything from that to helping in the recruiting office. When Coach Fulmer got fired, the recruiting office had nothing but VCRs. That's how analog everything was. Kiffin came in and got rid of all that, and everything became computerized. And that's when you saw the Exos and the Thunder football and cutting up, recruiting, truly making recruiting film on your own. So, you go get game film and somebody's in the back cutting up 7 good plays and 7 bad plays and putting it on a recruiting presentation with a slide and all that. So, learned how all that works. We were back there. One of my good friends at the time was Austin Thomas, who kind of took a different route into recruiting, where I went coaching, and now he's since the general manager at Ole Miss and has been, really famous in the recruiting world. So we were all there at the same time. There's a lot of guys that were GAs then that have now gone on to be agents. Clint Dowdle works with Jimmy Sexton. And, there's a lot of big time guys that are doing really well from that time in that 2008, 2009 Lane Kiffin years. And then Lane left. And I really, looking back on it, should I have gone to USC or not? When Justin Wilcox was hired from Boise State at the time, coming off their run. Yeah. He's 32 years old. He's a defensive coordinator, and he's still the smartest football coach I've ever talked to. And so he asked me to be with him. And so I stayed with him for 2 years, and that was probably the best 2 years X and O wise that I've ever been around in my career.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like you said, I don't think GA's analysts have it that bad, but do you think they don't know what they're getting into when they become GAs now? Or
no, it's not what it used to be, I don't think. I mean, my running backs coach from Blackman became a GA at MTSU for the last couple of years, and they do have it a lot easier than they used to. Now, this is the old man in me saying, here's what we used to have to pad film. But when I was a GA, everybody was saying, hey, we had John Gruden's splicer in the GA office because he was a GA at UT. And back then he had to literally splice film together. So it was worse. And then it got better for us. And then now we're kind of laughing because I'm not sure as much what they do now. Literally my next door neighbor, he works for Washington football. His parents live next door here in Cleveland. He's a Cleveland grad. And so we're kind of laughing about, what the GAs do now. They still have plenty of work. But with PFF, they don't have to do all the monotonous down and distance and hash and personnel and all that stuff, that we had to do. And it's been nice that now I've got some PFF access so I can go get all 22 film and I don't have to do it the old school way that we've been doing in high school for a while.
Oh yeah, or I remember in high school I was at the very tail end of driving to trade film. Like you had to
Yeah,
drive and
yeah,
trade film with the coach, and it was VHS. And then I remember my senior year, maybe it got switched to DVD. Like we thought DVD was awesome. He started
yeah,
showing film on DVD, and we're like, "What is this?" And I started coaching for him. He goes, "Steve, you got to drive halfway and trade this DVD film. Like here's two
yeah.
of them." And Huddle was kind of coming out, but not everybody could get it. And then I remember you first using Huddle, I was like, "No, this is dumb. Like, what are we doing?" And then now all of a sudden you're like, "Well, this is awesome. Just I can get whatever I want, and you can trade whatever you want, and send it to Huddle Assist, and they do it for you. Like, you don't have to do any of that." And I'm like,
Well,
"Oh, this is awesome."
fun fact, the state of Alabama high school football, this tells you how old school they are. Every head coach in the playoffs has to drive the Saturday after the Friday night game and be there at 8 a.m. for a Saturday morning set the bracket of every single round of the playoffs in Montgomery, Alabama. So I was the head coach at North Jackson and Stevenson, which is 5.5 hours away. It's on the other side of the state. You got to drive to Montgomery, be there by 8 or 9 a.m. every single round of the playoffs, because back then they used to exchange film physically.
Yeah.
You don't do that anymore.
No.
But they still make everybody drive and come together in one room to stand up and say your name, say where the game's being played, how many officials, sit back down, go home.
Why? We don't need to do that no more.
That's how old school that state is. So it's an awesome football state, and we knew during COVID we were going to play. And so it's funny now that I'm back in Tennessee, where I'm from. Sometimes we complain that we don't take it as serious as Alabama or Georgia or other states, but then I always feel better talking to somebody from up north, and then they're like, "Well, man, you guys in Tennessee have it so good," and then you guys talk to someone in California, and they're like, "Man, we have it good." And so it's just funny all over the state or all over the country how people treat it differently.
Oh yeah, because I talked to some coaches in like Wisconsin or Minnesota or Indiana. Like some schools, they're only allowed like 5 days in the summer. Like that's all they get.
Yeah.
They can lift and stuff, but they can't be around the kids in the summer, and just how it works. And I'm like, really? Like ours used to be 20, and then after COVID, they moved it up to 25 because a lot of people felt like because of COVID, you didn't get a lot of time. But now they feel like 25 is too much, and so they might scale it back. But it keeps changing on us. And like we used to be able to go full pads. I remember that was not a rule. Now it can only be like helmets for 3 days, shoulder pads. But that used to not be a thing. 2-a-days aren't a thing anymore up here. Like you're only allowed like 2.5 hours a day with them. And I tell the kids, I remember going at 6 a.m. and then you have another practice like noon or 1, and they go, "Why? What's that?" And I'm like, don't you know the show 2-a-days? And they go, "What show?" And I'm like, "Oh, you guys don't know."
Yeah, so we can barely do 2-a-days, but we still do it. So we do we call it training camp, and so we'll do 2 practices on that Monday. We can do a practice on Tuesday, but it has to be a workout, like it can't be practice. Then do 2 on Wednesday, same thing on Thursday. But we can only do it for 1 week because then school starts. So it's not great for us, but I do remember being in high school, we actually had 3-a-days. We had 2 practices, and we had special teams in the middle. But yeah, I mean, it's changing, but we're fortunate to get to do as much as we can in Tennessee compared to some other states. And honestly, I think COVID proved though that, teams didn't work out or do anything, but the same teams were still successful regardless of whether they were working out in the summer or not. So I think that's more program specific than just 1 year make or break it.
Oh yeah. We were that school where like certain schools around us were big time, and it did not affect them at all. They still had the same amount of kids. They still were. We only played 6 games. They go 5-1 or 6-0, whatever it was. Our school was not like that. Like it has to be consistent, has to be a culture set. And the head coach was an assistant. He got hired January of 2020, and then COVID hits. So I'm like, what a time for you to be a head coach when COVID hits like for the first time, especially in Illinois where everything was just crazy, where we're getting told one thing, then the next day it's this, this, and this. And I took the job in the summer because I was like, COVID can't last that long. Like it's going to be done soon. And lo and behold, we had to wait till the spring. But it was just Oh, I always tell people this. That fall, we were allowed. There was like a 4-day period where we were allowed to be around the kids. And all of a sudden, that 5th day, they said no more. And we went there. Me and the D line coach were brand new to the program, and we had so many linemen. We were like, "Oh my god, we can have just an offensive line, just defensive line. This is awesome." Blah blah blah
Mhm.
blah. We come back in the spring, everything was cut in half. Like we lost so many kids
Yeah.
as they figured out they could work. They figured out like
Yeah.
this could happen,
I
and it
was at North Jackson, which is a rural poor school,
yeah
and it was hard on them because
yeah
we were. But I mean, we saw the kids in the summer. We were feeding. My wife was feeding about 20 kids, 25 kids a day out of our garage, because if you didn't do that at that school, the kids weren't going to eat.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so that was kind of a different place. But in rural Alabama, they didn't care too much about COVID compared to Illinois.
No.
So
Well, that's the weird part is like I grew up in Central Illinois by Champaign Urbana. It's a completely different world where I grew up than up here in the suburbs of Chicago. So
yeah,
that was the funny thing was up here in the suburbs of Chicago, we were so many rules were set against us. And then I'm watching my buddies text me like, "Oh, we're out doing this, we're out doing this," and they're in Central Illinois, Southern Illinois, because they just did not care
yeah,
about what the governor was saying. And I was like, I wish I could do that, but I'd probably go to jail because I'm in the suburbs, like it was just, and it wasn't even like the fact that we had to do football. It was, I want these kids out of the house. I want them to be around each other. I want them to do something for their mental health. And that's all it was. But people are like, nope, you just care about sports. I'm like, no, their mental health. I don't care if they ride bikes together. I don't care if they're at the park. I don't care if they go grab a coffee. Like I did not care. And that's all it was. And so now I think that helped me as a coach because now I think I've become more of a therapist and more like caring to these kids. And I've changed how I coach. It's not drill sergeant. It's, I know who I can chew out. I know who I can't. And so I take positives from COVID, like learning that. And we're still dealing with the COVID kids, I call them. They're like juniors in high school now. So I call them COVID kids because they were in
yeah,
grade school when it happened. And they're finally figuring out how to talk in society and like figure out how they should act in school. But like that's how we've been battling that. Like kids do whatever they want in school because that's what they were used to.
yeah.
So it's become that. But then I've realized, are they doing this because they've had a rough home life and that's what they lived with? And now we're seeing the effects of it. So it was, like you said, we had some of those kids where we didn't know if they were going to eat. So we had to figure out a way to like be 6 feet away from them. But here's food, like, here you go. And, all that stuff.
It's crazy to think about going back thinking that stuff.
Oh, it's nuts. It's nuts. And like I said, I think differently than the suburb people because I'm from
Yeah,
a rural area. Like I don't think the same way. And I don't mean this is not politics. I don't lean one way or the other. I'm common sense. So when I'm up here and I'm listening to this from suburb people, I'm like, there's life south of I-80 because that's the cutoff. Like I-80 cuts off like Chicago and Illinois. I'm like, there's life that way.
yeah,
Where I grew up, like my school was 300 kids. I graduated with 76 kids. Like,
yeah,
and I went to Eastern Illinois where Charleston's not that big of a town. It's like 20,000 people because of the school. Like there's a whole other life. And so it was a rough time for me because I'm listening to all this. I'm like, God, like, let's just be common sensible. I want to do right by these kids. These kids live at rough homes. I don't want them being there all day. I need them to do something. And one school wouldn't even let us Zoom because I was at one school, then went to that one. Well, that one school wouldn't even let us Zoom with them. And I'm like, this is bad. I got to be able to see what's going on at home. And like, it was wild.
yeah.
It was.
I'm glad all that stuff's it's past us.
That was the one time where I thought about stop coaching because I did all 3 in that time frame. I was like, I need to stop because I'm so mentally done.
Yeah,
And then once it got back to normal, I'm like, okay, now we're back. But no, it's crazy how the rest of the world is different than like where we are because like even like East St. Louis is technically Illinois. So like, but they're in Missouri. So they were like, well, Missouri has these restrictions, but we play in Illinois.
yeah,
So it was, I remember coach down there was really like, well, we could play, but I have to follow Illinois, but I'm in Missouri. Yeah. And that was again a wild time. But anyway, enough about that. Enough about that. What made you then after being in college? Normally people that stay in college, that's where they stay, right? They just continue coaching in
college. So I mean, honestly, like when you're in SEC football, I mean that's the goal is you want to stay at that level of schools. And I had some interviews leaving UT. The timing was poor. When I left, I tell the story. Basically, my job was given away when I was at UT to help sign a player.
Oh, okay.
So I was just, an analyst, and once you spend your 2-3 years at that time as a GA or an analyst, like you're kind of expected to go become a coach, right?
Right.
So they ended up hiring a guy from a junior college to sign a player because he was his coordinator. He was a 5-star junior college receiver. Cordarrelle Patterson was his name.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Coach that ended up coming with him, that ended up taking my job, ended up becoming Brandon Staley, the head coach of the LA Chargers. So it was a good trade. So they traded my ass for Cordarrelle Patterson and Brandon Staley. And but I was looking for a job. I think it was in like February, March, April. It was late. It was long after the convention and all that stuff. I was going to take a high school job in Georgia, wanted to be a college coach. And so I ended up at the Cumberlands. Luckily, they took me on up there as a D-line coach, and I had no experience coaching D-line whatsoever. Some of the best things ever happened to me. If I would have left Tennessee and immediately gone to a Power 5 program or a Group of 5 school as a position coach, I would be a complete egomaniac asshole. Very similar to a lot of the ones I worked with.
Yeah.
If you only know that level, then that's all you know, and then you just don't really have the relationship with the smaller level colleges or the high school coaches. I went from eating these great meals at UT to I'm at the NAIA eating Ponderosa Steakhouse pregame meals, and I'm at Division II in Missouri, and we're taking a 12.5-hour bus ride to South Dakota to play a football game. I mean, it was a very humbling experience for me, but honestly, the best thing that could ever happen to me, because now I try to, remember what it was like. I went to the convention with Tennessee on my shirt, right here, and everybody wanted to be my buddy.
Yeah.
And the very next year, I'm wearing an NAIA school, and the same people look you in the face, and it was like I had leprosy, and they didn't want to talk to me. And so, like as a high school coach now, I try to treat Kirby Smart, if he comes to Cleveland, the exact same way as I would an NAIA coach, as I would anybody else, because I remember what that was like, and I thought that was messed up. And ultimately, you see it in this business. It's egos gone crazy. You see it all over Twitter all the time.
Yep.
Everybody's trying to one up each other and backstabbing and move up the ladder, and it shouldn't be that way. And we try to do everything we can do to prevent that. I try to not hire guys that are into that situation. We don't care about titles. At Cleveland is a good example. Like I've got 4 assistant executive, associate, deputy head coaches. Like I don't care. Like if you want to call yourself the co-head coach and put it on your resume, I will back you up.
Right.
I had a call a couple years ago. Hey, who was your OC this year? And I had to think about it on who was applying for that job to tell him that's who it was, because he used it as a title, but I don't care. Like,
right.
If it's going to help you get a better job and you feel strongly about it, cool. And by doing that, we made such a mockery of it. Nobody is constantly jockeying for position and trying to one up the other to be higher on the totem pole in the coaching pecking order. I worked for guys that took the assistant head coach title very seriously. And when he was gone, they want to become the guy, and they're working for the job when he leaves, and we don't do all that mess. So, I try to promote all my guys. I want them to go be head coaches. I want them to be coordinators. And I think by doing that, it kind of keeps all the craziness and egos in check. We still get it some. I mean, all coaches have egos, but we talk about ego as the enemy, and it starts with the head coach. And, if the head coach is not too good to sweep the floors and pick up after yourselves, and I clean my own office, nobody cleans my office. The same thing is, when you get a 4-star player going to Mississippi State and it's cleaning day for the receivers, his ass is cleaning just as much as the JV kids. And so as long as it's, ego's the enemy and you keep it in check, honestly, everything runs pretty smooth.
Right. When this head coach, and when I talked and brought me on, he goes, "You're going to be the O-line guy, but you're also going to be the run game guy." And I was like, "Is that just a fancy title for being the O-line coach, being the run game guy?" And he's like, "Well, you're technically going to be O-line, tight ends, and H-backs." I was like, "Okay, so I have a lot of responsibilities." He goes, yeah, but you're going to coach the O-line. And I was like, "Okay, you can call me whatever." And he goes, "But you're in charge of the run game. Like you and the OC are going to work." So like not co-OC and all this stuff. I was like, "Hey, my job is O-line. My job is to make sure everything fits together, and that's my job. If the
I
OC,
look at it as their titles for resumes, and
yeah,
if it's going to get you a better job, and you feel like the co-OC is going to get you an OC job, all right, cool. But ultimately, who's calling the play physically, and some people can do the group effort. I mean, there's a team in Nashville that's won a bunch of state titles, and 2 people call plays, and they alternate drives, and so they have different styles, and it works well for them. In our situation, I call the plays, but it should be a collective effort.
Yep.
And everybody's bringing something to the table. What you don't want, and I learned this when I was in Joplin, you don't want a coach to sit there and feel like they can offer something, but you're not going to ever take their ideas, because then they check out. Especially the younger coaches, because I've been that coach. I'm at Missouri Southern. I felt like I had a lot to offer. I worked for some pretty successful defensive coaches, give an opinion, but you're the 20-something. You just need to sit there and shut up. Well, you hear that so often, you're like, man, well, what am I doing? Like, I see what you're running. I see what we ran before. Like, I can help, but you don't want it because of my age. Where, like, if you look at our staff now, I mean, Coach Manis, who you've interviewed, he's 26. Yeah. I mean, my co-DC, my linebackers coach is 24. I've hired my quarterbacks coach is 24. So we've got a lot of 20-somethings that are smart, because we don't care how old you are. The same difference, I would love to have a 60-year-old. The age doesn't matter. It's whether you're able to drop your egos, come together, and you're not constantly jockeying for some sort of position or next job. You're trying to do the best you can at your current job, and that will get you the next job. Although I've made that mistake when I was younger. So, I mean, this is all stuff that I'm starting to hit a weird age. I'm 38, but I've been doing it for a while. And so now I'm starting to see all these things that are coming around that all the older guys told me about when I was young and didn't listen. And then now I'm trying to partake this wisdom on the younger guys, but so far most of the time they don't listen either. So I tell guys not to take a job, and they're going to do it anyway. So, they're going to learn their lesson the hard way, just like players do.
I'm going to be 34. And when you're telling me you're hiring 20-some-year-olds, I'm feeling old. I'm only going to be 34. And I'm like, oh, man, I've been doing it since I was 18, 19, like coaching. I was in college. I walked on for a year, got my ass kicked. I was like, okay, maybe FCS football's not for me, and start coaching. So now, like, I feel like an old coach, and I did all that. I became an OC at like 23, 22 years old, and you thought you knew it all, and then sometimes you learn best how not to do things. Like, I was around a toxic staff and that type of thing, and had a 40-some-year-old coaches yelling at me because I'm 22, 23, calling plays and basically calling me an idiot and why are we doing this? And then the head coach don't defend you.
And I've noticed, at least with me, I felt like, you go through these cycles. You feel like, oh, I know everything. I'm really good. Then you get around somebody that's really smart, and you realize you know nothing. And you feel like you're really good again. And it's this constant up and down, because the more you seek out knowledge, the more like you realize, oh, I don't know as much as I thought I did. And the game's ever evolving. I think you're going to get in trouble is when you think you got it figured out, and you're not seeking out extra knowledge or going to clinics or doing whatever you can do to get better.
Well, that happened to me during COVID, because I started this right before COVID, and then it just, COVID, there was no sports talk about, and coaches were bored, so they were saying yes to me and hopping on, and I like overdosed because I was getting all this information, but then I realized very quickly, okay, I thought I knew how to block like inside zone, or I thought I knew this, and not saying my way was wrong or how I learned it was wrong, but this person did it and it was easier. And I'm like, oh, you made it easier. Like, you're smarter than me to figure out this, or terminology is way easier. Or if this person does this, you're doing this defense or offensively. And I was like, oh my God, like I didn't think about it that way. And, and it has to become that. And I like overdose. I remember for like 2 weeks, I couldn't talk about football. I overdosed. I had all these notes, and my wife hates me. There's like 3 totes of notes in there. And she's like, I was just like, I can't. And then you're reading these books too. And like, but I realized even if I tweak one thing a year because I learned it and it's different and it's new and it helps us, that's fine. We have to adapt. And I think we also have to adapt to the players we have too. And that's what the big thing I learned was, Steve, you can block inside zone this way, because inside zone's our bread and butter, like that and wide zone. Steve, block it this way. Well, then I talked to Alan Rudolph at Ohio University. They live off inside zone. He showed it to me, and he showed me technique for linemen. And I asked him, why would you use this technique? Well, when you have this type of player, well, now I have this type of player who needs this technique to get there. And it might just be one kid, but that's okay. Like, and then the kids go, why is he doing it this way and I have to do it this way? And I'm like, because you can do this and he can't. And I don't have to be so hard headed. And now if I was 22, 23, no, you have to do it this way. You have to do it this way because I know it all.
Well, and I've talked to my younger coaches, especially because I was this way. When I came from college and I'm coaching high school, I still have all these friends in college, access to college film. So you felt in your mind, it's not okay to run unless you know colleges that are running it.
Mm,
And so you see what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
why would I run this play this way if this university doesn't do it this way? Because I was trained in college, like you're an idiot. These high school coaches don't know what they're doing. Like you hear all that stuff in the staff rooms. So I had to train my mind, like it's okay to run high school hairy plays because
Yeah.
they work, right? And we've got different players. So in the last couple of years, especially this offseason for sure, we've studied more high school film. Like I went and spent 2 days at Bixby, Oklahoma, trying to find high school stuff that fits us better than just worrying about the hottest college scheme or whatever's going on. Just because a college runs it doesn't make it right for the high school team.
Uh-huh.
Just because a college doesn't run it doesn't make it wrong for that high school team. Like we run a couple plays that I wouldn't run if I'm the OC at Tennessee tomorrow. But where we're at right now, it does work. And so, some of these younger guys that are always trying to grow their grow their knowledge, like, and they're watching NFL film and college film and all that. Well, the hashes are different. Like, so I can't run 3x1 snag concepts into the boundary because there's no room in the boundary in high school.
Right.
Well, it becomes all the rage or whatever, and you're trying to run it in high school. It's just not going to work as well. So you have to know what not to put in if you have access to all that information.
That was another mistake I made was I thought everything had to be like college terminology for the off chance that a kid goes to college. Now I still kind of do that, but I don't do it as much, if that makes sense. Like some things I'll say are college-esque that I steal, like, hey, this coach doesn't call Mike Will linebackers. He says the plus linebacker, the minus linebacker. I know some colleges do it. I'm like, hey, my kids can figure that out. We're going to do it.
Yeah.
But like not all my technique's going to be that way. Not all of this is going to be that way. And then if a kid does want to play college, then we start to kind of throw those things at him. Like we're still going to use ours, but we'll say things a certain way that just because, like, I talked to college coaches. Our head coach played at North Central at Division III, so he kind of has an idea and like tries to, oh, this kid might play football. I'll start throwing some words at him.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, we got to do what we do, and you got to say it the way they're going to remember it. It's more like, for example, I say wide zone because we run wide zone. We don't run outside zone. We run wide zone. Our defense coordinator sees something on film and he'll go, Steve, is this what we run, like outside zone? I go, no. It's wide zone. This is outside zone.
We've had that debate. Yeah.
Well, he goes, how do you know that's outside
zone? Or is it inside zone and all that? Yeah. And that's where we don't get into it as much. Our wide zone actually is probably someone else's outside zone. It's probably not your wide zone. But it's whatever. You're right. It's whatever the kids can remember. I had a discussion with my buddy. We run a play in 2 words. That's a shift in motion to an unbalanced jet sweep that would have taken Washington 9 words this year.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have to do it that way because it's NFL system, and the NFL has to do it that way because they have to sign players the week of and get them to play on Sundays. Well, the colleges can sell, we have this terminology and you're going to know it by the time you get to the NFL team. Where for us, we can't regurgitate all of those 9 words and still play fast. So we've shrunk it down to 2, and we use a lot of word association, and but we have to change our signals every year and change our play call names every year. So we got to keep, we're all PE majors. So we got to keep it pretty smart for my coach and the kids.
Yeah. Our head coach is a psychology teacher, so he could be pretty smart. But then we have like 4 special ed teachers, so they're able to keep it real smooth. So that's why I always joke our OC is a special ed teacher, and if our kids can't figure out the scout cards, I go, you got that Velcro board, because we got to make it simple, because the scout cards are a pain in the ass.
We use the go routes for scout cards. So that's been a huge thing for us. We've been using those for years.
We were going to do that, and then something happened where we didn't.
They're awesome. I recommend it.
Yeah, because I think our head coach in college sells it.
Okay.
And so that's why he was hoping to get a deal, and I don't know if it ever happened. Like, because that looked amazing. That and the iPad thing where people can draw it up and just show it real quick and stuff like that.
Yep.
That looks awesome.
Really good.
Well, we were just approved to have a drone film
Yep.
at our school.
Mhm.
Like we did it at a school I was at before, but we're now able to do it
Yep.
because they claim we're too close to O'Hare Airport, which is
Yep.
not true. But we
When I was in Huntsville, Alabama, we were too close to the to NASA and the Army base, and it physically would not take off. They blocked it.
Oh, really?
Army blocked it, so you couldn't have any drones in Huntsville.
Oh, weird. Okay, yeah, that would be weird. You couldn't fly it. Like it literally
would not take off. Yeah.
That's awesome. No, they just said you're too close to O'Hare. Then they said, well, the people around you might be uncomfortable. We're like, we're just on the football film filming it. Like, give us a break.
We have all those policies too, but yeah, we're doing the tethered drone this year. The one that stays up in the air is corded the whole time.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Ours, we got one that is really not like that. It's not wired, but it cannot go that high. It cannot fly for very long. Like it is designed for a football practice.
Yeah.
Like that's it. But the school I was at before, that was the first time. This was 2018. That was the first time I saw a drone film. Like we walked out there and the head coach is doing it. And I go, what are you doing? He goes, this is how we film. And I go, what? So I saw it and I go, this is a game changer. Like absolute game changer. And then we can use Huddle Sideline in Illinois. I don't know if you guys can. I know in Texas they can't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was another game changer, except we can never get it to work for 9 straight games. It gives out like
we've used every product. But yeah, we're with Huddle Sideline right now. We've used GameStrat, we've used them all. But yeah, you gotta stay on them to make sure it works and all that stuff. So I'm glad I don't have to mess with that anymore. That's one thing I gave up.
Our head coach does it because I told him, I said, I am not touching this because I did it in Charleston and I want no part of it. And during COVID, a guy plugged in the wrong box and I'm standing there watching him set it up. He goes, Steve, is this supposed to be smoking? Smoke was pouring out.
Yeah, no, that's not good.
No, no. And so he's like, Steve, you want to be in charge of some of this? I said, no, not one bit. So an alumni player is very good with technology, has come back to help us set that up. And we're like, oh, thank God. Like you're a game, like, because our school doesn't have like people to set it up for us. A school I was at before, they would set up for us. We go out there and it's already set up.
Yeah.
Like the school, it was like a class, like one of the classes for credit, go and do it. And then another school I was at, they have their own like TV network. So they do it on YouTube.
One of those. Yeah.
We don't. Like I'm trying to get that going, but it depends what area you're in
you got to find the teacher, but we got one of the best student run live streams and like all of our social media videos. We kind of get like our uniform video went out there, got kind of viral or whatever, but all that is student driven. So they're all coming to making it themselves. It's all designed by students, done by students. And so we've got they call it CHS Live, a great CHS Live program. They even do a coaches show every week that we can sponsor. It's in a nice studio. I mean, they do a great job at Cleveland.
That's awesome. I have to run all social media pages and coach the O-line and do this. So I'm out there at practice and practice is halfway done and some kid will go, have you taken any pictures for social media? And I go, 1, don't worry about it. 2, damn it, I forgot.
Yeah.
So then I have to start doing it and I got to post it every day. And then I run the Facebook page, Twitter page, Instagram page. I've got to make graphics. And I looked at the head coach. I go, where's my overtime pay for this shit? Because like, this is not my stipend.
I do a lot of that still. So we get help, but I'm very aware of our brand and what gets put out there in social media and graphics and stuff like that.
Well, our kids were like, well, we'll run the TikTok. And I said, no. Because we don't have one. They're like, I'm like, no. And they go, why? And I'm like, because you'll do something stupid.
Yeah.
And then you'll get in trouble and can't play. And then we will get in trouble.
Yeah.
Because we allowed you to do it.
Yeah.
If you guys don't get it.
Yeah.
No, you'll be okay.
No, that'll be smart.
Yeah, no. I'm like, no, you guys are not allowed to even think about it. What was it like working around Ed Ogeron? Because he has to be one of my favorite people to watch in interviews besides Mike Leach.
Yeah. I've met Leach twice. I'm a big Leach fan, but man, that staff that year was wild. So we had Lane Kiffin was the head coach. Ed Ogeron was our recruiting coordinator. Eddie Gran was a special teams coordinator, was real famous, been at Auburn for a long time. Lance Thompson is one of the guys I worked a lot with, one of the best recruiters in America. Frank Wilson, one of the LSU, Louisiana famous recruiters, was on that staff. I mean, we had Jim Chaney. I mean, we had so many. That was a big time staff that year. A lot of them became head coaches. Honestly, as long as Coach Orgeron liked you, he was awesome. So he liked me, treated me great. I do have a funny story about him. So you would go in his office and you'd open his right-hand drawer and there'd be all these coffee grounds in there, which I thought was strange. A lot of people know this, but he dipped coffee grounds while drinking Red Bulls. So we had an unlimited Red Bull fridge. And then the Red Bull cart, the little bitty cart, would show up and the girls would come up and stock the fridge. And so he's drinking Red Bulls and, dipping coffee at the same time. And then when he's drawing all of his notes for you, he grunts, and so it's, as he's doing it. And I remember, I was drinking a Red Bull at the time and, he's like, "Hey, Chandler, come in. I'm not gonna do my Coach O impression. Chandler, come in here." And he's grunting. And he's like, "I need you." And I'd interrupt him. And I'd say, "All right, Coach, what you need? I'm going to do this." And he'd say, "Stop." And then he'd start telling me again, "Chandler, I need you to go do it." And I'd interrupt him again, "Coach, and they'd say, "Chandler, stop." And I did it one more time. And he said, "I can't talk to you when you drink that shit." And so he refused for me to drink energy drinks in front of him because I got too nervous or whatever. I mean, he's a big old dude and I'm a little guy. And, but he was a blast, man. I mean, a lot of the people know, the ripping the shirts off and playing the drum for special teams meetings. And the biggest thing that whole year, that's the most fun I've probably ever had. It's top 5 season of fun. I was the low man on the totem pole, but like Coach Kiffin and those guys treated everybody well. Lane would treat the janitors well, the lunch ladies. Like a lot of people don't realize, like he was good to GAs, absolutely everybody. We had a blast. Now that's the hardest I've ever worked in my life. We had midnight recruiting meetings. You're working until the middle of the night. You had to be back at 5:30 in the morning. But at the same time, he took care of everybody. Not just the GAs, because like we'd go out and we're all the designated drivers, but it gives you $100. One of them would give you $100 cash for doing it. We didn't get paid as much as they do now back then, and that was awesome. Like you had to move their hotel rooms, boom, they pay $200 cash just for 30 minutes of work.
Right.
They treated us well. They treated all the coaches well. So Lane did a good job. If you liked ice cream, he was going to make sure you had an ice cream, unlimited Mayfield ice cream sandwiches as much as you want. If you like coffee, we had unlimited Pilot coffee as much as you want. We had a slushy machine because I think Jim Chaney liked those. Like we had, he would take care of the guys because you basically live there.
Yeah.
Whatever they want, that's what they got. And, we try to emulate some of that stuff. Now my coaches, we have an energy drink fridge and it's by the Booster Club and we run through that like crazy.
Love it.
And my guys were very high energy. And so we're constantly putting down Red Bulls and all that stuff. And so we get it stocked for them and we try to take care of them as much as we can. And same thing with the players with protein shakes or bars or, nutrition and all that. But if, that's one thing I took from him. Like we get more coaches gear than most places I've been. We take care of the coaches. We ask them to do a lot. We work hard. We require them to be around more than most staffs. They have to be involved with the middle school, be involved with little league teams. Each coach is responsible for one little league team because we're a true K through 12 program. So so I'm the head of football operations. So we start football in Cleveland with captain flag at 6 years old. 5 and 6, and then that's all the way up to 18. So we've got, we've got a 6U, 2 8U, 10U teams. Then we've got 6th, 7th, 8th grade. We started 6th this year. We've got a 9th JV, which we call the Futures, and a varsity team. So we have all those teams, all those coaches, and we're all running the same systems under the same umbrella.
That's awesome.
The same thing. It's pretty new. So that started last year, with all of our hire. But So far, it's been great, and we try to take care of everybody. Youth coaches are all involved on Friday nights as much as they want to be. Freshman coaches have Friday night jobs. Middle school coaches are all on our sideline. We're at every single middle school home game. There's games on Monday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday morning, and then we meet on Sundays with our players and coaches. So I ask a lot out of the coaches, but I'll hook them up with some free energy drinks and some Jumpman gear.
You need another coach because energy drinks, you got me hooked. You need another guy over there.
We're constantly hiring. So, we're getting bigger and bigger staffs, and we've been fortunate there. We've started a freshman program last year, and now they'll have 5 dedicated freshman coaches, hopefully 6 going into the season. And then now we've added 6th grade football. And so, now we've added 2 teams in 2 years, and there's an additional 8U tackle team. And so we've got probably around 400 kids, K through 12 in the whole program.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. I'll text my wife right now. What do you think about in Tennessee?
It's beautiful. It's in the mountains. It's great. Yeah, it's less liberal down here too, so that part's good.
I'll fit in perfectly. I'll have the accent going. Because people up here, they're like, "Are you from the South?" I'm like, "Well, I'm from Central Illinois." "Oh, you're from the South." I'm like, "No, but my accent gets me in trouble."
Yeah.
Is that a big reason why you took the job? Because that type of stuff was going to happen?
That was the main thing. I just saw the bones. So it's a harder job on paper than where I was at. Blackman's kind of well known. We signed 5 Division I players my last year there, 3 Power 5 receivers, and broke a lot of school records. And I was very happy where I was at. But Cleveland offered an opportunity to where it's just, for me, it's just football, and it's a big deal in a small town. And so now we can set up K through 12 the right way. We can build it the right way. It's not as easy as some of the 6A jobs. We're one of the smallest 6A schools in the state. And then our numbers, just because of our demographics at the school and all this, our numbers were down and low. And so we had to build a freshman team, and then now we're building a true program, as we go from there.
I meant to ask you this earlier, like when you were at your other schools, just researching you, like when I first asked you on a while back, it seemed like where you go, you're able to kind of churn things around a little bit. How do you do that? Like, what's the first thing you do? And like, where'd you learn that? Did you learn that from like a Lane Kiffin and stuff like that? Or
well, honestly, as a high school assistant, I was telling our coach yesterday this story. All I knew was just, what I knew. And so we won 10 games every year as a high school assistant when I was a coordinator, a defense coordinator and offensive coordinator. My first ever head coaching job, I'm in rural Alabama, and they had previously run the single wing. They only attempted 17 passes. I go in trying to throw it around, and we go 2-8. So I learned a lot of, what not to do in your first year as a head coach. By year 2, we got better at throwing the ball, but we also kept a lot of the single wing stuff, and we were able to do both. And then, we're breaking school records, and we did really well offensively. But each school has a formula. Pretty much. Like there's some programs you go to, they can't win no matter what. They're just because they're so poorly funded, or it's an inner city situation or whatever. You got to have 2 things to win. You got to have players, and you got to have money. And if you don't have players, you better have money. If you don't have both, you got no chance. I've kind of figured that out. And then once you go there, there's a formula at every place that can either get players or money, right? And so what is that formula? At Blackman, we were more of a upper middle class school. All of our offensive linemen were on the nationally ranked cheerleading team. We weren't the most physical kids in the school, but they could back up and get run over slowly. And we happen to have a lot of really good skill players. So we ended up throwing the ball a lot. We were 75% pass over those 2 years. First year we were very air raid. Then we kind of morphed into more of the Bryles deep choice stuff. And we signed 3 Power 5 receivers on one team. One quarterback walked on at Tulane. The backup quarterback could have gone to VMI. So that was the way that place was built. At the previous school, it was rural Alabama, and the more single wing run heavy you could do, the more success they've been. Just because it's hard to learn how to throw and catch when you're practicing on a goat ranch of a practice field and the balls are going into the thorn bushes.
Yep.
And it's just hard, and they've never done it. They're not doing it in middle school. They're not doing it in little league. To where, Cleveland is kind of a middle ground, and we're still trying to figure out what exactly do we need to do. What's the formula? Like at Blackman, we ran a play every 10 seconds. We were the fastest team by far in the state of Tennessee snapping the ball, but we had 125 players 10 through 12. Where now we're sitting at 55, 60 players 10 through 12. We went that fast last year, but we're having to defeat teams in our region that have 120 players, have
Right.
twice the numbers. So we're having to have those discussions like, do we need to slow down? What do we need to do? We're still searching for that formula, but once you find it, then you just, kind of stick to the standards.
Right. Yeah. Same thing here. Like I said, new head coach. Our head coach would love to be power I, run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And me and the OC are not about that life. I'm not saying throw it around, but I'd rather be 12 personnel, 11 personnel, being pistol, shotgun, do whatever. Mm-hmm. And so he levels with us. So he's the guy telling us to run the ball. He goes, you better run it here. You better run it here. Better run it here. And he's that guy. But we figure it out. Like we had a big 6'4" tight end for 3 years. And so we knew that he could run block. We knew he could do this. Last year, kind of really didn't have that. We had a kid that could play wing, but he wasn't big, but he could be that pass out guy and stuff like that. And so we adjusted, and we have to do it. And we became pistol because our running backs vision was not very good. So we were like, okay, we're going to have to be pistol. And literally and traditional inside zone people might hate me for this because I know inside zone, you aim at the guard, but every time I told the running back to aim at the guard, they were aiming at the freaking tackle. Mm-hmm. And now I tell them to aim at the center. Hopefully that it gets to that. And that comes back to, I know this isn't college-esque, but this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And I tell college guys, they go, oh, so you're running mid-zone. And that's where we start to battle back and forth. I'm like, okay, does it really matter? I understand that's probably really what it is. But for me, they're going to aim for the guard now because I'm forcing them to do this. They can get downhill. And for me, out of pistol, it's easier for my guys to cut out of pistol. Mm-hmm. My first year there, we had an amazing running back. He could go pistol, sidecar, wide receiver. So for him, it didn't matter. I could tell him to aim at the guard, and he was good. These other guys, they were not smart enough. Smart enough's not the right word. Their vision wasn't right. They're, all that stuff. And so we're figuring that out. So this year we were like sidecar, and I looked at the head coach. I was like, no pistol, because they know it already. Let's keep it that way.
I'm traditionally a 180 from the previous head coach that I take over for. So that always is hard. That's a hard adjustment. So I've always been an outside the box person. So, I guess because I didn't play college football. So then I've kind of grown up watching Paul Johnson and Mike Leach and all these guys. Yep. So then I get to high school and I'm visiting with Kevin Kelly at Pulaski Academy and, the guys at Bixby or at North Jackson and Blackman, we onside kicked every time.
Awesome.
So we've done a lot. We do a different swinging gate every single game. We go for two a lot. We rarely punt. So we went all in on analytics years ago. And so we're always outside the box. So as long I don't have an offense that I prefer necessarily, that's a misconception that I like to either throw it every down or whatever. It's as long as I get to be creative and designing something that is difficult for the defense, because I spent 13 years coaching defense, then I'm happy. So I think the single wing and all of its, or the wing tee and its nuances are just as interesting as all the run and shoot option routes from Mouse Davis back in the day. As long as you can, and you just got to understand it all, right? So the hard part is you can't be good at everything. You got to figure out what can your kids do. Year one is always very difficult because the seniors are slow to buy in, especially if they like the previous coach. And so year two is usually where we've had the tremendous success because they come back in the offense and now you can add more things, just because we do a lot. We don't run a lot of plays, but we do a lot of formations, different tempos, a lot of trick plays, a lot of, craziness or whatever, but we put a lot on a team to prepare for in 3-4 days.
Right. Cause I was gonna say, I remember hearing about I think you were on my friend Coach Banster's podcast, talk about you're an up-tempo guy and you're going to do this and this because you got it from Lane Kiffin. But I think that's just more like if you have the players to do it. If you can throw it at a team once in a while, do it. If you have the guys to do it, do it. If you have to slow it down, slow it down. And if you can
Yeah,
shift
and
and move,
relative to where you're at. And so I think especially offensive guys, they kind of get married to a system, and that's
yep,
what they know. And you do need to know your system. And if I'm running, wide zone strong and they take it away, what's going to be my answer? Like you have to know it well enough to have your answers for what the defense does. But
right,
at the same time, like you can't recruit in high school to a system like a
yeah,
college can. And so, we evaluate every spring what's the personnel we have coming back. This year's really neat because we have more tight ends on our roster than I've ever had in my career combined. And so
that's
now
awesome.
we're trying to figure out how to use them. And what's very difficult for a defense is if you can go 12 and 13 personnel, but you can still line up an empty and 10 personnel formations and everywhere in between. So we're constantly trying to evaluate what we do for spring practice in the summer, and most guys do. But it's trying to not ask your kids to do something that they're not capable of doing. I think kids can do anything, but like my first year going 2-8, asking them to throw the ball successfully when they only attempted 17 passes the previous year, it was just too much too quick to where by year 2 they picked it up, but you're going to either suffer that year 1 or go and looking back on it, I should have just implemented it slower. And then that year 1 would have been more successful. But everywhere I've been, man, the first year, all 3 head coaching stops, everyone says it won't work. You're an idiot. You don't know what you're doing. They say it up until that first season. Then that first season, regardless of what happens, they're going to say it. And they say it that whole off season. And then when year 2, it works. Then they got to find something else to say. But all 3 stops, it's been exactly the same problems with all 3 schools and exactly the same. Like they're basically milestones now.
Yeah.
We usually play multiple quarterbacks, and so those 2 quarterbacks parents are not going to get along. Like so, you're just waiting on that milestone to happen.
Right. And then I think offensive coaches, we have to be open-minded to other systems. Like I remember during COVID, that's when the air raid versus wing T arguments were happening on Twitter.
So dumb. So dumb. I mean, both of them are great. Like that's what's one of my favorite coaches to watch in Tennessee has won a bunch of state championships is Kevin Creasy at Oakland. And he's a wing T guy, and we are supposed to be on opposite ends of the spectrum. And we were major rivals in Murfreesboro. And he was wing T and I'm air raid or whatever it was, but we had the same philosophies. We're trying to use multiple formations to outnumber you. He's running jet sweep and buck sweep and toss. I'm throwing bubble screens and throwing it to the tailback out of the backfield, but it's the same idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is no system that's better than others. Defensive guys do that too. They say, I've had guys interview with me. I'm a 4-3 guy no matter what. Well, what if we don't have them guys? Like Hoss, you know what I mean? Like you have to be flexible. You can want to be a quarters guy all you want to do, but sometimes we haven't been able to do that in the past.
Right. Well, I was the guy watching it on Twitter, and then just once in a great while, I would throw a wrench in. But I knew just because it's funny, I get to see guys get mad, but I also was like, yeah, me personally, if you ask my true identity, I'm going to throw air raid and run zone and wide zone. Like that's what I want to do. But if we have kids that can run power and I'm having problems with what they're giving me, who am I going to reach out to? I'm going to reach out to a wing T guy. Hey, when this happens, how do you do this? Like I'm going to reach out to those people and figure it out. So if you watch some of the, pin and pull, we couldn't really do pin and pull. So we kind of went buck sweep. Now I called it pin and pull for the kids, but like for us coaches, it was buck sweep out of a spread.
Yeah.
And who did I reach out to? Wing T coaches, because they knew it better than I did. And so I think that helps us not be so narrow-minded in that. And then the next year, I had kids that could do true pin and pull. So then that's what we did.
I think Twitter is one of the best things to happen to coaches and one of the worst.
Yes.
Because I've made more connections and found coaches and found ideas and found people to learn from with Twitter. But at the same time, you see all the craziness and everyone trying to argue and be right. And, I troll my defensive coordinator more than anybody because he is all up in the Twitter mix.
Oh, yes.
And so a lot of times you'll see me comment and just try to piss him off.
Yep.
But, I mean, it's a great thing. I wouldn't have found him probably if it wasn't for Twitter. I know it was. And so he wouldn't be as, on my staff and being a good coach for me. But at the same time, like, I don't know why it always has to turn into some sort of ego thing. And it's gotten bad in Tennessee to where you got students creating fake accounts to tweet at coaches and their wives and all this stuff. So it's gotten pretty hostile sometimes. In the South, man, football's a big deal. So we see it all down here.
Oh my God, I can't believe that. I would freak out on kids if they did that. I'd be like, "You did what?"
Yeah, I mean, you get used to it, I guess, when you're in the limelight. But yeah, I mean, it happens.
The only time I kind of blew up on Twitter was it was a general honest question because I was starting to really kind of learn duo, and I'm watching, the inside zone versus duo. So I drew up our inside zone, and I was just generally curious because I saw somewhere where my inside zone was somebody's duo. So I drew it up, put it on Twitter. General question. I said, "In your offense, what do you call this?" Oh my God. The people commented like, "Yeah, this is inside zone." And people are like, "No, the way you drew the running back lines makes it this and this and this and this." And people were like, "You idiot. This is this. Like, what the fuck's your problem?" And doing this. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
Like I generally just put it on there because you're just sitting there on a Sunday or something and you're curious and put it on there. And I would rather have a conversation and be like, "Okay, this is your duo, this is your inside zone. I don't care. I'm
Yeah.
just curious." And it just blew up to this thing.
If you could do away with burner accounts, I think it wouldn't be necessarily as bad. But yeah, either way though, I mean, but that's men, that's egos. I tell people every man in America can work a grill and can know how to coach football and can sit up and call plays and call you an idiot when it doesn't work. So we do some crazy things, and so we look really dumb sometimes. When you onside kick and don't get it, or you run a throwback to your left guard and he drops it. So we've had some dumb ones over the years, but ultimately you just got to live with it. You got to block all that stuff out. Like especially once you become a head coach, like if you listen to it, it'll drive you nuts. Like your first year being a head coach, but then the more and more you just hear it all the time, and now it becomes second nature.
Well, the longer I keep being an assistant, the less I want to be a head coach. Sometimes I'm like, I kind of like my little. I call it the pride lands. Like this is our area for all linemen.
Oh my God, it's overrated, and be careful what you wish for. But then at the same time, they're going to do what I did and take a job.
Well, if I was 26, yes, that was my goal. Now that I watch the head coach, what he deals with, like he's trying to get new uniforms. We got to do the helmets, then we got to do this, and he's got the youth program, and he's got this, and he's got 4 kids at home. And the more I watch it, I'm like, yeah, maybe I'm okay. Just
some of my best coaches, and worse, but honestly, some of the best have been former head coaches because they understand what you're dealing with. And so my right-hand man right now has been a head coach in Alabama for a while. And so he does it all. I don't even have to say anything. He's already on it before I even get to it. And those guys are worth their weight in gold.
Yeah. I try to take the pressure off him. Like,
yeah.
Hey, I run the Twitter account, so I put on there, "Hey, college coaches, if you're reaching out, reach out to me," and I put my email. So I try to take that off his plate. What else have I done? The social media he was trying to do. I was like, "No, I'll do it." He's looking at uniforms. Hey, I'll help you look at them. What do you need? Like help to look. And it's just small things.
I don't weigh anything, so that's I should really delegate more. I'm trying to do a better job. And I've got guys that I trust. It's just, when you get it going to start, I think over time, then you'll be able to slowly give it away.
Well, he's the same way, but that's why we have to do it. Like we have to say like, "Oh no, we'll go do this," or like, we have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches out every morning for lifts. Like, cause some kids just don't eat breakfast. So we're like, "Hey, we'll set this up for you. Don't worry about it." I took it upon myself to start a speed program. Like, "Hey, you don't worry about speed. Don't worry about lifting. We're going to take care of it." And he did. He went to Vegas one day for football because his sister-in-law had tickets to this band, and he was like afraid to leave. I'm like, no, we got it. You do a lot. You got it. Take a day.
The best thing, honestly, my guys at the banquet, they give me like a $100 Starbucks gift card or something like that. And Coach Reynolds gave a speech and all that. Man, that means the world when the assistant coaches will go do stuff for the head coach without being told. It's a big deal. I've got multiple guys. They check with me every day. They say before they leave, they say, "Coach, do I need anything? Do you need anything before I leave?" And I don't even think about it. But it's a huge deal. So for all the assistant guys, man, that'll get you in a head coach's good graces quickly.
Yeah. Sorry, I pulled the book out. You said Ego's Enemy, and I had to pull it up. I was like,
I
got it.
Yep.
That's what I was digging for. I got all these books over here, and I'm like, wait, I got that book somewhere.
That's a good one.
That one and Mike Leach. I think I read those 2 each summer. The swing.
I got those. Yeah.
Because
Honestly, my favorite one is a very tiny book, but anybody that's a new head coach, it's called Brands Win Championships. I think it's by Jeremy Darlow.
Yeah.
That's been tremendous for us from our branding standpoint and how we chose our logos and colors and uniforms and all these things. It's really neat, and I'll always recommend that one to everybody.
And a good one is essentialism. It's like doing less with more. Like
Yep.
if you've seen Feed the Cats, Tony Holler.
Yep.
Tony Holler lives the next town over from me.
Like Naperville or something, right?
Yeah, I live in Naperville, and he lives in Plainfield, right down the
Yeah,
road.
yeah.
And he told me to read it, so I did, and that's where I took a step back and I go, I'm going to work hard, but I don't need to work hard at a million things. Like, yeah, essentialism.
Write that down.
That one, and what was the other one he told me? Where is it at? Chop wood, carry water. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But the essentialism one's good. It's about
doing
focus on what's important right then and there. Like, I can't explain it. It just makes you kind of rethink of like, yes, we want to do all these things and be really good, but we don't have to do it all at one time. We don't have to stretch ourselves thin and all that type of stuff. So it's good. He told me to read it, and that's kind of where his Feed the Cats mentality comes in. And we started doing it with our football program. I took it upon myself to do all athletes this summer. So I worked with girls basketball. I coached boys basketball. So we did it. Soccer. So I was at the school at like 7 a.m. planning it all out for guys. I'd be at the soccer team at 7:30, girls basketball at 8, football at 8:30, basketball at 9. I was just working with every sports team. And again, my wife's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I'm trying to get good graces with the new athletic director, and he loved it. He's like, this is awesome. And it could turn into being like the sprint coach for all athletics, like just trying to get them all on the right path. But that was kind of essentialism. I'm going to do a lot, but in that moment for that half hour, I'm only focused on this, then focused on this, and then focused on this, not thinking ahead and not worrying about, I'm going to keep it simple and we're going to do this and try to just focus on that. And
I'm going to check that one out. That's right down my alley.
Yeah. Tony Holler on his website has a bunch of books, and I've tried to get them. And Twin Thieves is a good one. There's another one I can't remember. I have so many books I can't remember. I have so many books I have to read. Well, Coach, I appreciate you taking so much time to talk to me today.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I don't even really know what we talked about. I don't even know what we talked about. But yeah, I'd much rather talk ball and do this because man, anytime as a head coach you get to do this stuff, I appreciate it. So thanks for looking into us and always talking to the Cleveland guys, getting our name out there. So we appreciate it. We're in Cleveland, Tennessee, not Ohio. Beautiful area, the Lake of Coe. We go, rafting and all that right outside of Chattanooga. Yep. Not far from the Georgia line. Nice place right here.